I am here with Liz Carmouche, the Bellator Women's Flyweight Champion, now going into the PFL regular season at flyweight, the weight class they're introducing this year. Going to be fighting Juliana Velasquez on April the 4th, first fight of the season. So, Liz, first of all, I think that's the big news. You are going from Bellator over to the PFL season. How did this come about? Is this something that you requested? Is it something they approached you about?
No, not at all. The only approach being if I wanted to participate in the PFL season, to which in my mind I said without a doubt, absolutely. As far as fighting Velasquez, no, that was just a draw, and I just happened to get picked for it. I honestly forgot that she was fighting for Bellator and even the possibility of being a prospect in the tournament. So it came as a huge surprise to me when that was the first name that I pulled for the first fight.
I think it came as a surprise to a lot of us. Did you feel that there was any unfinished business at all there, or do you feel confident? You know what? We'd already kind of settled this, but so be it. This is how the chips fell.
Yeah, I didn't feel like on my part there was any unfinished business. I still felt like at the end of it, I went to shake her hand and she was still shrugging me off and a little bit disrespectful, shook her fight teams and she's just giving me the cold shoulder. So that being the unfinished business in her mind, she doesn't feel like she lost either of those fights. The first one she felt like was a bad call. The second one she felt like I just cut her off timing, which otherwise she would have won that fight. So the third one apparently is the one that I finally have to put the nail in the coffin to make her be quiet about all this.
Well, this is going to be kind of an interesting development. One of the questions, and this is kind of a side question that I meant to ask you, are you still the Bellator Women's Flyweight Champion, or is that title now vacant?
That's the question. I know I've been asked the same thing, and I'm not sure. I don't know. I know that when I got offered the opportunity to be a part of the PFL season, that I said I absolutely for it. I want to do it. The opportunity to have that belt, but also the prospect of being able to do title defenses as Bellator flyweight champion. That I would love that as well. So I'm not sure where I stand with them. I do know I'm participating in the tournament, and that's about the only thing I do know.
Well, definitely looking forward to the tournament. And, for years, myself, many fighters, many other journalists, many fans went to Scott Coker and said, hey, why not do the women's flyweight tournament? So does this feel like kind of in a roundabout way you're finally getting to do it?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely thought it was going to happen. I'd heard rumors about it happening in Bellator. I was in anticipation of it happening. But hey, here we get a chance to do it for $1 million, and it's a title in a new organization. That's a lot cooler. I only have one belt, so to have an opportunity to have a second one sitting on my shelf looks way cool to me.
Well, it definitely does. And, you obviously are pretty familiar with Velasquez having fought her twice. So this kind of scouting report is already there. But are you really expecting much different from her when this fight rolls around?
Yeah, absolutely. I in my mind, now seeing the lineup for the season, she to me is one of the more dangerous opponents. Not necessarily for skill wise, but because for her, she has everything to gain and nothing to lose, which is makes a really dangerous opponent. Right? There's $1 million on the line. She feels like those two other fights are unjust. So in my mind, that's somebody that's willing to do anything it takes to be able to win, even if it's something illegal, something dangerous that puts them in a compromising position. They're willing to throw out their complete game plan if it means an opportunity to win. So that means that I have to be prepared for any possibility, as opposed to setting somebody and putting forth a game plan, knowing like, hey, this is what you always do. I expect that I'm not going to recognize Velasquez, that it's just going to be a new opponent and she's going to go out there doing something I've never seen before.
Now, the other wrinkle here is that you don't just have Velasquez to worry about. I mean, when you're just defending a title, and I say just like it's nothing, it's obviously a big thing, but when you're traditionally defending a title, you're focused on your opponent. Here you've got the rest of the field that you might want to keep an eye on. When you look at the rest of that division, you did mention Juliana is one of the more dangerous competitors in there, but you got people like Dakota Decheva and a number of other names. So do you have your eye on anyone else?
Yeah, on all the females. I think that they put together a solid tournament. It isn't like I'm looking at like, oh, that's going to be an easy win. Like there are names on there where I may not have known them. I looked them up. I'm like, oh, no, she's not a chump. This is an easy win for anybody. There's not a female in there that isn't dangerous. Am I certainly looking as the two most well-rounded, I think, offer the most threat? Absolutely. I think we're looking at Dakota and we're looking at Talia as being the most threatening within the tournament as far as their skill set and what they can offer. But it could easily happen with the way that they're paired up that somebody else has the best tools to beat them and someone else advances and I'm in just the same amount of trouble with somebody else.
And you mentioned Talia there. Talia Santos, obviously, who was signed. She was over in the UFC for a while. Does the format of this tournament change anything? Because you are going to be fighting relatively close together for these first two fights. So does that change how you approach anything?
The only approach being is just different than I've normally treated things, right? Usually I stick around in whatever city it is, in whatever state, country it is that I'm visiting. And I usually check it out for a little bit, for like a week, make it like a vacation thing, 4 days. So instead of having that time where I'm being a foodie and enjoying and being gluttonous for a few days, I have to be sharp and go right back into training camp. So as soon as I'm done, I'll head right back out and get right back into the flow of things and concentrate on the next opponent.
And my other question here, kind of related to that, but do you like the prospect of knowing exactly when you were going to be fighting this year? Like you potentially have four fights, you're going to go know the dates, it's all going to be laid out for you.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, in the past, it's always okay, go back into the gym and try and work on self-growth, evolution. Try to keep your head on a swivel, not do stupid stuff that is putting yourself at risk, and just concentrate on being the best version of you, but without having an opponent to concentrate on your strengths. This means like I know exactly what it is I need to dial into. There's no messing around and being goofy. It's get in there and do what I need to every single time. And that's a much better experience than just being lackadaisical at things.
Well, obviously, this is a huge opportunity. Looking forward to the tournament. I'm curious just to know, you have spoken over the years about potentially maybe trying for a title in another weight class. Now, the PFL is only doing the one women's division this year, but once the Bellator sale went through and once the PFL came into things, were there any talks at any point of maybe a bantamweight division or something else in the cards, or was it pretty much this from the outset?
Yeah, I think I was the only one talking about the bantamweight division. I'm super hopeful that the inclusion of this season that I can get to win over PFL, get to know them better, and ask them to do the 135, similar to what happened with PFL before, we're going from 155 down to 145. I'm hoping that do everything right this season, and I can get in there and talk about including a 135 for next season.
And I guess the other possibility after this season is all said and done is they do the super fight division that's going to be launched as well. They do have that. Is that something that would interest you, even just doing a one-off fight with maybe a bigger name if someone's available?
Yeah, of course, just staying active and be able to do anything. The season play is definitely um, a lot more inspiring and motivating when you consider the payout is $1 million, and that's more money than I've ever seen in my life. And of course, just having that working for a title as opposed to just a fight. But being able to move up a weight class and do things healthier and not having to subject myself to a weight cut is definitely really appealing.
And you mentioned $1 million, very appealing as well. And the other bonus, I guess, because Bellator was doing the $1 million purses for their Grand Prix, and now you are going to have that potentially waiting for you. I don't want you to look too far ahead, but with that kind of money, do you have like a first purchase in mind, like just a little thing that you might go out and splurge on?
In all honesty, it's all responsible things. I bought a home, didn't really have the money to be to any business buying the home, so I'd like to be able to pay off that home and be done with it.
There we go. Get the mortgage out of the way. That's the responsible
Exactly.
adult thing to do.
Exactly.
There's some other news that, and when we're on the topic of financials, and I don't love talking money with fighters too much, but the UFC just settled a major lawsuit, and you are going to be covered in that class period in the lawsuit that they have settled. You were fighting there at that time. Potentially, you were going to receive some of that money, whatever it works out to be. I'm curious what you thought of the settlement, and if you thought it was a win for the fighters in the end, if you think the promotion won one. There was a lot of different reactions online, so just curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think the only way that it could truly be a win is if there's unionization that came out of it. If we'd work towards that, where we have the fighters where they're not independent contractors, where they're not guaranteed health coverage for putting their bodies on the line, that truly would be the win. It's not a paycheck, whether it's $1 million, 100,000, 10,000, whatever it works out to be. The benefit that really truly could have come as a win out of here is, yes, now we now have more awareness of what's going on. That's been shown to everybody else. But if nothing changes out of this, if we're still all independent contractors, we're still not getting the medical coverage we need, we don't have 401ks, we're still putting our lives on the line in the hopes that we have a long paid out career, but for some people that's very short lived, then really I don't see how much came out of it. Like the biggest win is a change for what's going on. And if a change doesn't come out of this, then it really didn't do anything.
I guess my one follow-up question then is, we don't know if the UFC in particular is going to change their ways. Maybe they'll have to change their contract situation to kind of avoid another one of these. But for now, it's a settlement. Do you expect to see unionization? I'm not even going to say within your career, but within your lifetime, do you expect to see fighters unionizing?
I certainly hope so. I feel like there's got to be changes going on. And sort of that kind of what has to happen there is that trickle down effect, right? Those fighters are making those enormous paychecks, and we're seeing such vast differences in the others. They're the people that have to speak up and speak out to help those. And I think until that happens, we won't see it in my lifetime. I certainly hope so, because the last thing I want to do is think that change doesn't exist in a positive way. And I certainly think with all the changes that I've seen happen throughout my short time in the sport, that there's been so much inclusion and so many positive changes that there couldn't be another positive shift, right? It has to be possible with everything that happens. So I certainly want to, but I'm also a realist and know that if the big faces aren't doing it, then it's not going to happen.
Well, fingers crossed. And, we sometimes forget, I think, too, that it is still a very young sport. When you look at all the other leagues, the NHL has been around for 100 years. Major League Baseball has been around for 100 years. And you've got MMA that's been around for less than 40. And you go, wow, well, maybe it's going to take a little longer. Fingers crossed on that front. I'm going to get back to the fights and some of the fight stuff. First of all, going back to the Bellator sale, how stressful was that for you? Just not knowing if the promotion was going to be there at the end of the day, if you were going to be a free agent, if it just went away.
Yeah, certainly a little bit stressful, right? Again, I was erring on the side of caution with it. Maybe it doesn't go that way, but I definitely thought that it looked like it was a future worth promise, right? In my mind, the rumors that I heard that PFL was going to be the one buying out Bellator, I truly thought that was going to happen. I kept saying like, I think it's going to be PFL, and I was pushing like hoping that it'd be PFL 135, but I definitely thought that it was going to be PFL, which just gives us so much promise and hope. Women aren't getting paid $1 million to fight, not in 4 fights, not in 12 fights. Like there are plenty of women that if you've never gotten the belt and if you haven't had great success with the belt, you're not making that paycheck. So to have an organization that's willing to put up that much money, and it doesn't matter what your gender is, that's somebody I want to fight for, and that's exciting. And so when I heard that was possible, I was definitely rooting for it and hoping that it would work in that favor and we'd be with PFL, and it definitely played out that way.
Well, that is a great thing for sure. And then, I want to ask you about just on the Bellator front. The first event in 2024 was the PFL versus Bellator champions, and we've seen this in the past. Bellator did the crossover with Ryzen, went 5-0, and they went head to head. And then you go against PFL, and I think it was 5-1 because there were 6 fights on the main card. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
what does that say about the depth of that Bellator roster and the team that was built in that organization?
Well, I think it's not only just the depth of the pool, because I can certainly see that for PFL, they've got some great fighters that, like that was definitely when you saw that with Bader lost, it was kind of one of the fights that I honestly thought was going to go that way. And when I look at the other ones, one of the defining characteristics that made it unique and made the success of Bellator over PFL was that they were throwing elbows. And one thing that the season play, anybody that's been with PFL more than a season, certainly even just a season, if you get into that habit of never being able to throw elbows to your opponent, and then all of a sudden you get hit with one, that's a game changer. That changes your whole perspective on anything. You get hit with one elbow and all of a sudden you don't know where you're at anymore, and you forget what you're doing. And you saw that dominated for every single success that where they achieved a win. Elbows were a factor in that. So I think that had it been on that same rule set, I think it would have been very different. I think the biggest thing and the advantage that worked in favor of Bellator was being able to throw elbows like they normally do.
And you bring up one of the one rule set changes, one of the differences in the PFL format because of the season structure. They don't do the elbows because if somebody gets a cut, then they're into the tournament. I
Yep.
kind of understand why, but yeah, is that going to be difficult for you to adjust to going forward?
Yeah, of course it is. There's always just like the idea if I did combat jujitsu, there's going to be some limitations. It also makes it exciting, but there certainly is. That's going to be a difficult part. Is some of it is just muscle memories, being in certain positions, and you just instinctually do things out of habit. But the benefit I have is I did start in Strike Force where females weren't allowed to throw elbows, and I was in those positions where I couldn't do it then either. So I certainly know what it means within the format to be able to succeed and take advantage of the positions you're in, where normally it's a game changer and an ender once you throw elbows, but still being able to finish without that.
Well, it is going to be one to watch this year, the women's flyweight tournament for the first time. They did a couple fights in the Challenger Series last year to prepare for that. Some of those fighters are coming in, and then yourself, Juliana, joining Dakota from PFL Europe. I think it is going to be a great tournament. And Liz, I think you are, needless to say, the front runner in this. Does that add any pressure to you? Do you go in with these expectations on your shoulder?
My only expectation is to go out there and give my best performance. Every time that I've defended the belt and I've gone out for the belt, I try and treat it as though I don't have it. I don't take it with me to the fight. I'm not walking around with it. I leave it at home. I cover it up. And my whole mindset going into it was I had to fight for that belt and earn it every single time as though it was never mine to begin with. So coming into this is I'm treating it the same way. Each time I face an opponent, it's to give everything I have and I have to earn it and I have to work as hard as I can to achieve that win.
Well, great mindset. Absolutely love it. Looking forward to the fight, April 4th, San Antonio. The trilogy fight. I'll ask you one more before I let you go. Just give us your prediction for this fight. How does this play out?
I think it's going to be a win in my favor for a knockout, and I'm going out as fast as I possibly can to get it.
Good stuff. Liz, thanks very much for the time today. Looking forward to it again. Best of luck in the fight and looking forward to seeing more of you in the season.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Have a great day.
You too.